The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to All You Can Eat. It's the podcast about deliciousness. I'm your host, Rob Rosenthal, here with you live in the middle of a beautiful June day. Episode 110 here of All You Can Eat. Tonight, my guest is Will Thompson. I spent most of the winter in Miami Beach, Florida, where it was great. It was great because during the height of the pandemic, it was good to be able to get outside every day, and the weather was beautiful, and I was outside every day. The thing about being anywhere during the winter was that, of course, we had this kind of lockdown situation, which made it hard to go out to eat, which is something that I think we all like to do. And it was no different down there. Well, I mean, it was different in the sense that the folks down there didn't seem to recognize that there was a pandemic going on. So a lot of people did kind of crowd into places without any type of precaution or prevention, but that wasn't really my way of doing things. So on the occasion that we would go out to dine, of course, we would look for places that offered outside dining. And we found a sushi place down in Miami Beach, ate outside. Lovely. Found one of my favorite restaurants of all time, forever, top 10 on my list more than one time, Joe's Stone Crab, where they had set up dining out in the parking lot under a tent. And you know what? The stone crabs were still extraordinarily good. Found a local Peruvian restaurant that made a killer ceviche, which I could eat. I miss it. I mean, I could literally eat at that place 2 or 3 times a week. Just a giant platter of raw, marinated / cooked in lime juice, a variety of fish and seafood. Just great. Locura Marina, the crazy sea. And then discovered, much to my delight, that there was a restaurant called Jaguar Sun at Lot 6. Lot 6, I believe, was the location. And I started reading about Jaguar Sun, and I see that what they're basically doing is it's a steakhouse. I mean, I don't know where these people came from, because it looked like it was kind of a pop-up situation, but people were loving it, that you could go eat at Jaguar Sun. Essentially, even though you walk into a place, you're eating outside. You're under the open sky. 78 degrees at night, stars up above, cool Miami breeze, giant banyan tree in the courtyard. Tables were picnic tables, large wooden picnic tables, far separated from each other, 4, 6, 8 people at a table. And over in the corner of the restaurant, there you can see grills, man, and they're just grilling away. Beautiful martini, lovely steak, eaten out in the alfresco. I mean, damn, that was really good. And so my conversation right now, you can hear it, because we spoke yesterday afternoon just about this time, is with Will Thompson. He's one of the guys. He's one of the 2 guys that's behind the restaurant. And we spoke about, where it came from and how they got there and how they dealt with the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And so, my friends, without further ado, just because it's getting super noisy behind me, I am going to cut to my conversation here with Will Thompson of Jaguar Sun at Lot 6, and I'll catch you on the other side. Oh, hey, everybody. Say hello to Will Thompson. How you doing, Will?
I couldn't be better. How are you?
Well, I'm not going to say that I couldn't be better, but I confess that I'm doing very well.
I'm glad to hear
Um,
it.
Welcome to All You Can Eat. It's the podcast about deliciousness. You're a guy that knows something about deliciousness, so let's have a conversation. And I always like to start, Will, at the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston, Mass. And then how did you get into, I mean, we're going to eventually explain to the people that am I speaking to you? Are you in Miami Beach now?
Not on the beach, but I am in Miami. Yeah.
You're in Miami. Okay, that's what I meant. And we're going to eventually explain to the people about your operation. But how generally did you get into the food business? Did you like grow up thinking I'm going to do something in food or cocktails or beverages? What's your backstory?
Yeah, a little bit I did. My memory gets a little hazy around high school, but
Yeah,
even then, I remember having a little bit of a fascination with especially the bar side of things, like playing bartender at high school parties, like a complete dork, and that just kind of carried through. Same thing happened in college. I went from working in cafes to more towards like real restaurants and then eventually bars. So even though, I was going to school, I went to college for a little bit. I didn't necessarily know that this was something that was going to become my career. I think it is something that, at least in the back of my mind, I was always pretty interested in.
So to put this thing into some type of perspective, you're in Miami. You have a restaurant. It's called Jaguar Sun. But I kind of didn't know, like when I went, I'm a food guy, right? So it's my business to kind of pay attention. I kind of didn't know that there was something, but like there was a thing before Jaguar San. I figured you must have been in in the restaurant thing. I only am reading recently that you were running a cocktail bar that you were able to convert into this restaurant. How did that happen? How did we get to where where I met you before we get into the whole
Sure.
shift of the pandemic thing?
Yeah, so I had worked in bars and restaurants in Boston for, my whole life. I'd gone down to New York a couple of times. And then the year before I came to Miami, I was living in New York as a brand ambassador.
Okay.
So I was traveling all over the country, checking out every market. Sorry?
Who were you brand ambassadoring for?
For Grand Marnier. So I
Okay,
was
great.
the Grand Marnier brand ambassador, and it just allowed me to travel all over the place, right? Do it on somebody else's dime, so really to go out and eat and drink in a lot of different places and see a lot of different markets,
Love
which is
that.
a pretty incredible privilege. But one of the things that made clear to me that, I knew I wasn't going back to Boston. It seemed like every city I went to just had a complete surplus of these cocktail bars, right? Like you go down, you're like, oh, Nashville's a cool emerging new city. And you get down there and it feels like there's 10 cocktail bars on every single block, which is great, bless. But it really it didn't give me a clear path, right? Because I also knew I didn't want to be a brand ambassador forever. Right? I think I'm kind of more of a doer than just exist and enjoy the world. And then I would come to Miami. And it felt like a really stark contrast to anywhere else I was, not just because of the sort of quality of life stuff or the pace of life, but because you would see the same young people, the same sort of creatives that you'd see anywhere else, but there weren't nearly so many bars and restaurants of this kind of like more modern style, whatever you want to call it, as there were everywhere else. So eventually I'm talking to an old regular who's a chef. He worked for, Dave Chang for a long time. He worked at Per Se, a very, the strong chef. And while I'm a brand ambassador, he's working on a project that he got introduced to by an old childhood friend that he's going to build a little restaurant in this weird lobby space in downtown Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So he's talking to me a little bit about bar stuff, a little bit about front of house, a little bit about design. And the more I talk to him and the more I'm working as a brand ambassador, the more I realize that like, hey, this might just be the absolute right fit, right? Like Miami's got a little bit of this city of tomorrow quality about it. But maybe that was starting to materialize a little bit. It wasn't just that someday Miami would have more bars and restaurants. It was like, maybe that's right now. So I got down just about 3 years ago, and we opened the bar about a month after that. So we had been running this tiny little cocktail bar / restaurant for a year and a half when COVID happened. Mm-hmm. And I think where we met might have been at that pop-up that we ended up opening as a response.
Yeah. That's exactly where we ended up meeting because we get down to Miami basically, Thanksgiving. And I'm going to tell you that I was surprised. I mean, I've been going there for many, many years, but my surprise was that it didn't for the most part, it didn't appear to me that people recognized that there was a pandemic going on. I mean, there was a lot of
Yeah.
people in a lot of
Yeah, it was
places, and
pandemic
they weren't.
optional in Miami last year.
Yeah, and they were not exactly what one would call, careful. And so it was frightening. But you're down there to be outdoors, and then of course you get cabin fever. So I see that there's this steak restaurant pop up. So I grab a reservation, and we eventually make our way over there. It's only, what is it, 10, 12, 15 minutes max from where we are in Miami Beach. And from the time that we walked in, I was like, oh, this is freaking great, because I don't know how you found that space, but there could not have been a better space for operating a kind of restaurant that you were operating in a pandemic. And I will just explain to people who don't know that you're walking theoretically into a place, but the fact is that there's no roof. It's entirely outside, and the tables are spread very far apart, and they're predominantly picnic tables, to my recollection, which can hold anywhere from a couple of people to a party of whatever it is. And then there's a lot of grilling going on. I don't know, Will, you'll tell me how much electricity was required out there, but you're eating under the open sky, and you're having grilled steaks and killer martinis, and I'm like, damn, this is fantastic. So tell the story of how you kind of got there, and what went into the thinking about it, and
Sure.
and what kind of food you started making over there under the
Yeah. So, COVID did hit in Miami, whether or not the city or the state chose to recognize that. We had closed our bar almost exactly a day before the city shut everything down. Right. So we're back in, I'm going to call that February now.
Right.
We shut it down. It's like, cool, we've got a little bit of money in the piggy bank, so we can kind of keep paying people for a little while. Figure this will be 3 or 4 weeks. We'll get a lockdown, and then we'll just go on with life. And obviously that's not what happened. So I think initially we were probably trying to do the same stuff everybody else was, right? You're trying to figure out takeout, you're trying to figure out delivery, whatever, like anything you can do to continue being a business. And it just, the more stuff we tried, the more clear it was that whatever we were doing was not our path forward. So next up, there was a really cool organization, one of Jose Andres' organizations, kind of like sister, like partner groups. We're paying a number of different restaurants to make meals for frontline workers, which was amazing. The problem was Miami wasn't, not the problem, but an attribute of Miami was that as a more outdoor place, a lower population density place, whatever it was, hospitals weren't really getting jammed the same way. So we were on lockdown, but we were making all these meals for hospitals that weren't super in need of them. So it was an amazing thing. We're making 500 meals at a time, packaging them up, delivering them in a kitchen that's maybe 10 by 20, right? Like the smallest kitchen you've ever seen in your entire life. And it was great. It felt good. But the reality was we were kind of playing at helping. Right. And eventually they just kind of ran out of resources. So we get to this point where it's, I don't know, let's call it June, where we're like, cool, this is the moment, right? Florida has zero safety net. You cannot sign up for unemployment. Even if you could figure out how to sign up for unemployment, it's like $200 a month. We're not going to cut everybody loose. We're not just going to close, because the likelihood of us never coming back feels really high. So what do? We got in touch with the landlord for the space that you joined us at. We had toured his neighborhood a few times. He's a big F&B guy. And we said, hey, can we take our shot out here? Do you mind if we try throwing a couple of pop-up dinners? This is a big enough space. It's outdoors enough. It's under this beautiful banyan tree, right? Absolutely stunning tree.
Blow away. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know that I told you this when I saw you. There's a restaurant I used to go to in Brazil called Figueira in Sao Paulo, and Figueira is like fig tree, and the fig tree dominated the restaurant. Like you felt it. Well, it was the same thing when we walked into your place. Yeah, that tree was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's the tree of life, right? Like that's what got us up there. That's the thinking for us was like, look, we've got a little sidewalk space. We could have built out into that, but it was never going to feel like a restaurant, right? In no world is this kind of pretend ramshackle, whatever we're going to manage to put together with the none dollars we have at this point, Like, it's never going to do that thing that a restaurant's supposed to do. It's never going to get you on that second glass of wine or that second cocktail to just kind of sit back and look at the lights and appreciate it and like feel the way you want to feel when you go out.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought maybe this tree and this space was going to allow us to do that. So the landlord says, yeah, let's do it. You know, we had to, like I said, we had a prior relationship. He's somebody who's very savvy about restaurants. So I think he saw that there might be some value in what we were doing. And we said, great, we're gonna give it a shot. It's about 5 miles north of where we are. So we're gonna do all our receiving and all our prep at our original restaurant, which is 1,000 square foot on its tippy toes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're gonna bring it all up to lot 6, which is the name of the venue. And we're gonna throw a couple of taco dinners. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to do tacos, right? Our thought being everybody's a little bit broke right now, right? Like we've all, nobody's got any revenue coming in for the last few months. Let's do something really democratic. And what's more democratic than tacos? So we were getting, a really great masa. We're cooking everything on a cocina. Our sous chef is about 7'4", I think. And he's like on his knees grilling on a cocina. It's unreal. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And the first service was, I think, the worst service I've ever worked in a restaurant. I don't think we remembered to bring like ticket printers. Like it was just, we could not have gone down in flames harder, but the people were there and they were into it. And, it was clear that even if what we were doing was not been executed, maybe the way we hoped, that, you could feel that people had been cooped up for months and months and they wanted it.
Right.
So we kept doing tacos for a few weeks. And I think it was at that point that it became really clear that as much as people liked that we were doing something and that we were doing something that was really socially distant and really safe and really emphasizing safety in a city that for the most part didn't super care. It's just, we were missing the mark a little bit, and it wasn't that people were going out 4 times a week and just not spending very much money each time, is that they were going out once a month, right? Because you had to find a sitter, you had to make sure your sitter was tested, right? Like the amount of planning, the amount of work it was taking to go out had just gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And trying to do something that was kind of low key it wasn't appropriate, right? It wasn't what our guests were telling us they wanted. And that's kind of where this steakhouse came from, is like, what's fancy? What's fancy that everybody knows is fancy? You be a food person, you be not a food person. Like, to be totally honest, and this is not something I generally share, I don't eat steak. I haven't tasted steak since I was like 12 years old. I'm pescatarian.
I love that.
Like, it's ridiculous. But even I put me in LA, I want to go to Frank Musso. Right. Or put me in New York, I'm going to Keen's and Sparks or House of Prime Rib in San Francisco because it's awesome. It's just it's an excellent way to interact with a restaurant, and that's really what we wanted to channel, because it feels like going out, right? Even in this ridiculous context of sitting on a picnic table out inside in the Miami heat in August, September, whatever, it still feels festive. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think a thing I've really learned and really internalized is that people want to eat and drink contextually. Right. So it's like, cool, I tell you this is a steakhouse, you're going to drink martinis. You know what's super fun? Drinking martinis. It puts people in this state of mind where they're ready to enjoy stuff in a way that creates the energy and creates that room, even though, we don't have a ceiling. So that's a lot of the genesis of kind of where we came from. Oh, and to your point about electricity, there's about none. Right. So downtown in our original restaurant, we're making pastas because we don't have a hood, right? Tiny, tiny little cabinet of a kitchen, a little bit of electric, but no hood. So we can't grill anything, can't do any meat. We get up to lot 6 and, there's enough electric for string lights, but there's definitely not enough electric for us to put out, 8 induction burners. And so there was a need element to steak as well.
Well, did you... so with limited electricity, what did you have refrigeration or no?
Yeah. So we basically gutted everything we owned down at Jaguar Sun. We brought it up there. So we've got a handful of reach-in fridges. I buy ice. They gave us some, the ice vendor I work with, I like a lot. They lent us some of those coffin freezers that you can reach into. So we had a little bit of refrigeration, certainly enough to make sure that everything we were making was nice and safe, but definitely not enough to be cooking for 200 people a night on.
Right. And then for fire, you used fire.
We built the grill.
Yeah, you built the grill.
Yeah, it's a sheet of steel.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about a hood or ventilation there because we are literally out in the open air.
Yep, 100%.
And you used the electricity to do exactly the right thing, which is to put up some string lights, which together with the tree and the picnic tables and people drinking martinis made it a completely comprehensive, joyful experience.
On its best nights. Other nights it rained.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I don't remember seeing umbrellas there.
We've gotten really good. I don't know if you've heard, there's a restaurant in Mexico City called Concha Mar that I like a lot. And one of the things that's my favorite about that place is you're sitting in this big dining room and you watch these guys just whipping around, moving tables, opening tables, rebuilding the space over and over again to kind of match what they need in that moment. Right. So we tried to channel some of that for how fast we got at opening these big 10 by 10 tents to cover, because it would, for about 2 months, it would rain on us every Friday at 8 o'clock. And everybody would scatter if we couldn't get them covered fast enough. So the good days, it felt like the most happening, amazing, real restaurant in the whole wide world. And then you've got this other half of the time where, all these New Yorkers are complaining about being soaking wet. Everybody from Miami is just sitting there drinking tequila and rosé. But we had to come up with some creative solutions for problems. Yeah.
That particular generalization I can relate to, because I know that what you're saying is true. Now, like New York is honestly, as one, born and raised, I can tell you what you're saying is true. So because the podcast is about deliciousness, I do recall not just the regular martini, but it kind of came like a giant martini. Like there was, it wasn't like let's have a martini. It was like I believe you were serving a small pitcher of martinis, if I have that right.
Yeah, medium-sized pitcher of martinis. Yeah.
Fine. And by the way, like that's the other drink. I would say if somebody said to me, Rob, you're going to open a happy place, martinis is one, margaritas lend themselves.
100%. 100%.
So tell the folks, I remember, again, because I'm going back to December, basically. I remember oysters. What else was on the, and of course I had, grilled steak, but what else is on the menu? What else did you have on the menu over there?
It rotated a little bit. Supply chain issues were a really serious problem last year and kind of continuing into now, to be honest. So it would change with what we could get. Seafood, we try and do crudos, shrimp cocktails, stuff like that whenever we could. We've got some amazing salads. I think one of the things I love about our chef Kerry, about his food, is that he's not afraid to lean into some bigger flavors. Mm-hmm. So like our Caesar's got like real spice to it, I think oftentimes people shoot for the middle, especially in that steakhouse context where it's like, cool, somebody's about to drop some serious money on a piece of meat. Let's make sure we don't piss them off before we get there. Yeah. And this was a little bit less apologetic. Yep. This is like, maybe this isn't going to be for everybody, but if you like it, you're going to love it. Yeah. And I think that went a really long way. So the menu's tight. I think we're doing, at the end, we're doing 3 salads, a really beautiful tartare. We've got these, not that we're a famous restaurant, but our Parker House rolls are quickly, they're people might not know about us, but they're going to know about these Parker House rolls. We've got a number of different steaks. There's a beautiful dry aged pork chop. The snapper set I love now. We're doing a banana leaf snapper with some fermented Thai chili in there. And then a whole handful of different sides and sauces. So
super well.
You could come in twice and eat the whole menu, maybe the proteins aside, but I think all those dishes are more than worthy of a revisit.
Super well done. And then I guess the question is, then I remember reading out of nowhere that you had to shut it down. I still to this day can't. I don't know why. What happened then?
Well, we got shut down. It looks like somebody else didn't love what we were up to, and I don't want to speculate too much as to who or why, but it seemed pretty clear that somebody had called the state in on us. Wow. We got about a 4.5-hour inspection from 3 different inspectors. It started right when we opened. They just kind of followed us around for the entire day. And then at the end said, great, everything you're doing is safe, but we're closing you because you have an outdoor kitchen. We had been all buttoned up with the city. We were on as far as we knew, we were 100% above board. Right. But it turned out that the state was suddenly cracking down on us for, in their mind, being unsafe, despite the fact that no one on our staff gets COVID this entire time. None of our guests, right? I think there's a violation of letter of the law, even though we were holding up the spirit of the law, perhaps a little bit better than some other folks. So we ended up getting closed for, I think it was 3 weekends, 2 weeks. which was a little heartbreaking. I mean, that was, that first night we opened, I thought was my least favorite night I'd ever worked in a restaurant. It turned out it was the night we got closed. It felt really, really bad. Just the idea that all of a sudden out of nowhere, like these 25 people were going to be unemployed, right? With no recourse, no backup plan, no nothing, just like one day the lights are off. So fortunately, our landlord's, doing a lot of stuff with the city in terms of developing the neighborhood we're existing in. And he was able to really, really help us find a temporary permitting structure that allowed us to just reopen with effectively mosquito netting outside the kitchen. So we got back on it.
Where's the space? Where's the place?
So we're in a neighborhood called Little River.
Okay.
Which is just north of Little Haiti. It's like 5 miles directly north of where our restaurant downtown is. But it was a huge push on their end to get us buttoned up with the state. And I don't think as tiny little independent operators, it's something we ever would have stood a chance of doing ourselves.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of moments where I look around at what everybody else was doing in COVID and being like, hey, how come you guys didn't have a little more imagination with like how to solve these problems? And then I say, wait a minute, shut up. That is insanely arrogant. Like we got really, really lucky to find a venue like this and to find a landlord who is going to be gracious enough to help sort of extend his resources to us to allow this thing to continue to happen.
Yeah, there's luck is a good thing. You can't underestimate that. And then Florida is a crazy place.
Florida is the Wild West.
Yeah,
1,000,000% over. Yeah.
Yeah. What about, so is it in the new venue? Is it the same situation where you kind of?
No, it's the exact same space. We just put up mosquito netting around the kitchen.
Oh, so you literally are still at Lot
Literally.
7.
It's still Lot 7. Yeah. We never
I didn't
moved.
realize. Okay.
We closed and reopened. We just, mosquito nets.
You just figured out.
A funny part of it, just in terms of like, now that we're kind of on the other side of this whole thing, we just closed up the pop-up. But the mosquito netting behind the grill would catch on fire all the time, right? Because that grill would get really, really hot. Sure. So our solution was we've got 3 or 4 squirt guns that we would just keep filled and ready next to the fire. And every time our, it's mosquito netting that is allowing us to continue to open because it's just so much safer, would catch on fire, we'd have to, pump up the squirt gun and spray down this thing. So it was a little ridiculous. It felt a little maybe Kafka-esque at times, but it let us keep everybody employed. It let us keep going. And we did another maybe 3 months after that shutdown.
Oh, and where are things now?
So we've just closed up for the season. It's getting to a point where it is really hot down here. We're seeing rain more and more frequently, and our staff's fully vaccinated. Right. So those are, that combined with all the sort of sound advice we're getting at the highest levels about what's safe and what isn't, kind of indicated to us that it's okay to go back inside. It's okay to start up business again. So we just on Saturday had our last service there. Another probably couple of weeks, we'll be reopened at our original location. So we've kind of come full circle at this point.
Now, is it going to be on? And then, are you planning, by the way, because I'm kind of hoping to get back next winter? Are you planning to go back to the outdoor space, or?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little enamored with that space at this point. I don't know if that's what's that thing where you get kidnapped and then you like a Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if it's that. It might be that, or it might just be that that's a really good tree. But I feel like honestly, we did the work of opening a restaurant. Right. It was in unusual times. It was in a weird way. It was scary a lot of the time. It was hard a lot of the time, but we're a year in. I mean, like that restaurant was still busy when we closed. Yeah. And I think walking away from that just doesn't feel like a real option to me.
That's great. That's great. That's exciting to hear. Well, this is very good and very helpful. And it's encouraging because I want to come back.
We'd like to have you back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, I think to your point, I mean, there aren't, like, when you think about, people talk all the time about concept, you know what I mean? But, there's nothing wrong with a martini and a steak in a beautiful outdoor space in Florida on a nice night. It's just all good. There's no down to that.
I'm with you. I think we're on the other side of that bell curve, right? If we think about craft, especially in beverage, because beverage is a very underdeveloped industry compared to food. Especially cocktail, right? Because wine's kind of developed the same as food is. And I think we got stuck on the upside of that curve, kind of rewarding novelty and rewarding this like theater a little bit too much, right? Mm-hmm. And now maybe it's COVID, maybe it's just what was happening anyway, but I feel like, at least for me, I'm a lot less interested in going out and spending whatever it is, 16, 18 bucks on a cocktail now that a consultant bar manager put on that maybe reads well. And then you take a sip and you're like, shit, I wish I had a martini or a margarita.
Yeah.
This is very much like let's use all these like cool techniques and ways that we think about what makes stuff delicious in food and beverage, and let's apply it to the normal stuff that people actually want. Like things that are genuinely craveable, things that you can have, a dish that you can have a few times a month, or a cocktail that you want to drink another one of as soon as you finish it. And to me, way more often than not, those things are at least going to look like normal. They're going to look like the stuff you've seen a million times.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I think that's a good insight. And in terms of what, like if I ask people, especially in your, business, what did you learn from, what's the takeaway from the whole COVID experience?
Mm-hmm.
Among the answers is kind of that, the notion of the old kind of white tablecloth, super, high-end, expensive, pretentious almost meal is less of a thing now. People are more satisfied with, I'm happy to go out in a place that's clean and safe and making me decent food and a nice drink.
Yeah, I think luxury might, for the most savvy of diners, I think luxury's changed a little bit.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily need those same trappings. But I will come back to it. I think normals, at least for us, that's kind of the name of the game for a while. It doesn't mean pedestrian. It doesn't mean like just the opposite.
No, it's
right. It's like, let's use all this stuff that we've figured out and let's apply it to smart stuff that's actually delicious. Like, what's really great after a martini? Another martini. You were talking about those pitchers a minute ago. No more than two. That's how you get into trouble. But like those pitchers, we had to figure out how to make stuff really, really cold the whole time you're there when we're in, 88-degree Miami heat. Yeah. Right. So the pitcher's super fun, but it's also doing this job of keeping the balance of your cocktail on ice while you're enjoying short pours over and over and over again. And that martini is going to be singingly cold. And that's like, yeah, it sounds simple. It seems a little bit stupid, but had we not been thinking that way, we would have been serving what would have been almost immediately like hot martinis to people, and the whole thing would have fallen apart.
Yeah, and there's no market for hot martinis. I agree with
not
you.
Yet.
I agree with you violently, by the way, about the best thing after a martini is a second. But I would also say that you have to be careful, because I find this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I find gin as an example to be hallucinogenic in a way that no other spirit for me is. So I remind people that there was a woman back in the 30s in the New York literary circles, Dorothy Parker. She was famous.
Yeah, there's a great shit named after her.
The Algonquin Round Table, where these people could drink. And she was she's famous for the little poem that she wrote up. I like a good martini.
Oh yeah.
Do it the very most.
After 3, you're under.
After 3, I'm under the table. After 4, I'm under the host. That's exactly.
Yeah. Well, we've learned enough from the Me Too movement that we try and keep church and state fairly separate.
I understand.
But no, I mean, martinis are great. It's like this quick onset. Dave Embry, in his book, The Fine Art of Mixing Drinks, that's always one I point to when people start asking about cocktails.
Right.
Talks about some of the reasons a martini is so great. And it's like, yeah, you take a sip and you feel 10% better than you did a second ago, right? Like it's instantaneous.
It works quickly. Well,
it does.
I want to say you did a great job. I'm glad that we were able to catch up now. I'm super encouraged that we can come back next winter if we can find somebody to rent us a place to stay, because that changed, and that I can end up again enjoying a martini or two at the Jaguar Sun at Lot 6. And I am going to, and I'm giving you this one for free. It's entirely up to you. But when I come, I'm going to be bringing my own water gun, and I would encourage your guests. I would encourage your guests to bring their own as well.
Absolutely encouraged. I'm gonna fill mine with gin now.
Yeah, that's a big idea right there, by the way. Then people don't mind getting squirted, if you know what I'm saying. All right, Will, great to have you here on All You Can Eat, and thanks for that. And I hope I'll be able to see you this coming winter. Keep up the good work in the meantime.
I appreciate it. We can't wait to have you back down.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. Will Thompson, Jaguar Sun, Lot 6, steak and martinis, happy making food. Lovely conversation. I do actually look forward to getting back there. That is episode 110 of All You Can Eat. I will remind you that you can always look for our episodes on iHeartRadio. Look up All You Can Eat or Rob Rosenthal. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Spreaker, etc., etc. If you need to locate me, I'm Real Rob Rosenthal in some places like Instagram. Or Short Order Dad, if you happen to be a person that's interested in the Twitter or Facebook. And I have a new website that you can check out, realrobrosenthal.com. I'm available all over that thing. And I have a book, which is real good for Father's Day if you don't have a present yet. It's called Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free. Episode 110, All You Can Eat. Back with you next week. Another guest coming up then. And, until then, remember this, my friends, life is short, so never waste a meal.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan